Canyon, and I'm the Program and Volunteer Coordinator with GROW. And today, as we've just mentioned, we are lucky enough to have Lorraine Medici, Director of Training and Development with Express Employment Professionals with us. And as Director of Training and Development, Lorraine has successfully launched Purpose-Driven Leadership Training, a leadership academy targeted at helping develop leaders at all levels in manufacturing and other industries. Lorraine has extensive experience as a personal development coach and workshop facilitator in the areas of leadership, team building, and sales. She works closely with clients to help diagnose company challenges and provide action plans to enhance employee engagement, build stronger leadership teams, increase retention, and bring about cultural awareness through workshops and personal coaching. So I can wholeheartedly say we are in good hands today. If there are questions throughout the session, feel free to put them in the chat box. I will be monitoring that. Otherwise, I think we're a small enough group. And Lorraine, you can agree to this or disagree as we go, but if you just want to unmute yourself and pop in a question, comment, I think we're certainly happy to have this be as engaging and interactive as can be. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over. If there's questions throughout, remember chat box, or just go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll get started.
All right. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, ladies, for joining. Yeah, this is kind of fun to just have a small, intimate group like this. So feel free to, jump in. And hopefully I'm giving you kind of a 20,000-foot view of this particular topic because I am very, very passionate about it. Starting off to talk a little bit about why is this important in the leadership training that I do. It's an 8-week training, pretty intensive course, really turning the mirror on yourself. One of the things that I recognized right off the top was that a lot of leaders are really kind of behind in really understanding how to lead folks. And there is definitely a movement, and a very strong movement, to be much more of a coaching leader. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the younger generations, and I'm saying 40 and under, are really looking for that kind of leader. Think about this. We spend about 40% of our waking hours devoted to work in some capacity. So when we think about that, if you're a leader of people, that's a tremendous responsibility. We know that the number one reason why people stay in an organization or leave your organization has nothing to do with the organization itself primarily. It is still the number one reason is because of the leader, their immediate leader, the person that supervises them. Matter of fact, just happened this morning. I was doing a training and found out one of my participants on it said, I just gave my 2-week notice, nothing against the company. I just can't work for the leader anymore. So long are the days of kind of the telling and yelling. It's not being tolerated. It is definitely a buyer's market, not in housing, but in the job search. We alone have about 700 positions here at Express. We're a staffing agency, and the training division is just one of the aspects of our company. So the thing what I want you to kind of keep in mind is your leadership, how you come across is really a branding of who you are, your organization, and it starts to become, are you an employer of choice? Are you the person that people want to work for? So that's kind of the why I wanted to kind of bring that out. You guys, I hope that maybe you had the opportunity to print out the handout. If you do and you like to take notes, I think I've given you some ample opportunity to do that. If you don't want to take notes, that's fine as well. But here's what we're going to be talking about, 3 areas today. I really wanted to focus on the mindset of a coaching leader. What is that belief system that we should have as a coach? What are the traits that I should inherently have? And if I don't inherently have, how do I get them and really use them? And then lastly, our skill sets. And there's so many. I do an advanced class called Developing Coaching Leaders, and we really, really dive into that, where you're really understanding how do I hold people accountable, which I'll talk briefly about too. So mindset, traits, and skills. That's kind of what I want to leave you guys with today. All right. And again, ladies, feel free to jump in anytime. Okay, so the first thing I have are challenges. And what I'd love for you to do is just, you can just, let's just talk about it. What are some of your biggest struggles that you have currently with the people that report to you that just really kind of get under your skin? Oh, Diana's smiling, so there must be at least one. And you're muted.
Yeah, I am.
Okay,
No, I'm just chuckling. It was different when I was working in a,
sure.
municipal environment and had people. Now I work with a bunch of independent business owners. So, they like their independence and nobody can tell them what to do. So
Yeah,
it's a different environment.
sure. Great. Jill or Emily, any thoughts on some of those struggles that you have?
I have quite a few managers that are first-time managers and have not had any kind of coaching for them, and they lack a lot of the skill. They don't engage with their employees. They don't understand why they have turnover, and just trying to get basic principles out to them.
Yeah, so for them, it's equipping them, right? It's equipping them on how to coach others.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I hope that today you'll have some of those opportunities to look at that. Hi, Tara. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you heard the question, but what are some of those biggest struggles that you have with others? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I did. That's why I raised my hand. So my apologies for being late, and my apologies for no camera. I'm recovering from a minor surgery, so
Okay.
I'm looking a little rough today.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining.
Yeah, I'm so glad I was still able to make it. So one of my biggest challenges is that I'm truly struggling with is I have an employee who they want their way in all scenarios. This individual is very contradictory. So if we say the sky is blue, they'll say, nope, it is neon green. And if we say, you're right, actually, I see that now, it is neon green. Nope, it's blue. I just have, we have a policy in place that, we have one policy in place, and, when we talked to her during her annual review last year, she made a comment about how, fairness is important to her, and she wants, she wants to be treated fairly and everybody to be treated the same, and then turns around and says, but she doesn't want to be painted with a broad stroke. So one of these policies that we have in place, it affects her, but it's a policy so that everybody is treated equally, and she doesn't want to be held to that same standard. So it's that kind of thing. We've experienced it with COVID. No matter what we do, we basically get feedback from her that she thinks we should have handled it differently. So, she would be like, oh, you should do X, Y, Z. We do that. And then turns around, well, you should have done this instead. And it's just, it's exhausting.
It sounds like you can't win with
that's
her.
Yes, that's exactly how.
Yeah. And does she report to you?
No, she doesn't directly. So we're a real small business, and she reports, because she's clinical, she reports directly to one of the owners and clinic directors, but I'm HR, and I'm senior leadership. Okay. And so I have a lot of say, I guess, in her management, so to speak.
Okay.
Or at least a lot of say in these policies and procedures that we roll out for all. Okay. But you're right, that's exactly how I feel. Like, and my peer in leadership, who directly she directly reports to, we just feel exhausted. We can't
Yeah.
win with this individual, no matter, and we try so hard. And I know for me personally, meeting people where they're at and trying to, like what you're saying is, be a place where people want to be. And I work so hard to put employees first. Their happiness means a lot to me. So this has just been a huge challenge. I don't know how to
Okay.
better this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Tara, let me go through some of these
Mhm.
different points, and let's see if anything resonates.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as I'm listening to you, I can kind of probably narrow some of that, but let's I don't obviously know the whole picture, but let's move on, and I want to keep that uppermost. And William, thank you for joining us as well. Okay, so I want to keep thinking of having you thinking about the whole the coach piece here. I want to do kind of a little bit of a poll, if you don't mind, and I want you here momentarily, if you can get your phones ready, and I ask you, what word comes to mind when you think of the word coaching, basically. So if you want to take your phones and just open up that camera app, put your camera up to the code there, you can, or you can just text the Slido, or go to slido.com and put in that text number. But I'd like you to come up with one word that comes to mind, and you can put in, do it several times, but what word comes to mind when you think of the word coaching? Let's see what we get. So if everybody want to participate for a minute on that, let's see what we get. Rosie, you're encouraged to join us if you'd like. Have fun with us here. Let's watch these words show up. And if another word comes to mind, go ahead and add that. So we got encouraging and teaching, helping, supporting, great. Mentor, love it. Listening, excellent. Any more, folks? Yeah, there's there's my word. Who wrote empowering or empower? Thank you. Love it.
That was me.
Thank you, Tara. And challenging too. Absolutely. All right. So think about that. There's a lot of different hats that we wear when we wear in coaching, and there's a little bit of an issue with that. And part of that issue is the fact that because there's so many different hats, we start to lose a little bit of a sense of, well, what is it really? Okay. Because a lot of times when we think of a coach, we can think of a sports coach. The overwhelming word here, somebody that you guys put in there, was encouraging. So the bigger the word in this word cloud shows that most of you feel that that's a big piece of it, right? And let's put some parameters around that by saying this: encouragement doesn't always mean that it's an end result in which it's going to feel good. Encouragement could be, I got to bring some feedback to somebody because I care enough about them to see them thrive and get better, and they need to stay on this course. So encouraging could mean we need to see some corrective change, which I'll get into. So again, this is kind of an interesting look when we do this. When I do this with other groups, this is some of the words that will come up. So thank you for doing that. Here's a definition, guys, and I didn't really leave you room to write this, but you can write it somewhere on your sheet. If this is one of my favorite definitions for coaching, and I'm going to read it out loud, but I do want you to take notice of those words that are in bold, because I think some of those words are very, very critical. Coaching leadership. And so now we are really defining now coaching leadership is one characterized by collaboration. In other words, it's something that you do with somebody else, not to somebody else. So it's characterized by collaboration, support, and guidance. Coaching leaders are focused And again, that's a key word, bringing out the best in their people and teams by guiding them through goals and identifying obstacles. And I really want you to hone in on that. Tara, when I think about your situation that you were open enough to share here, there's definitely some obstacles with this employee that need to be addressed, and you guys have done an amazing job listening, but thinking about how do I deal with that next part. So hopefully you guys have that definition. Again, coaching leadership is one characterized by collaboration, support, and guidance. Coaching leaders are focused on bringing out the best in their people and teams by guiding them through goals and identifying obstacles. All right. Okay, I wanted to just, and you guys have this in your handout as well. What's the difference between bosses and a coaching leader? Bosses do a lot of kind of telling employees what to do, what not to do, and how to do it. And at times, guess what? That's very important. When I'm brand new in an organization, or I'm a brand new learning from you, of course, you're going to want to have somebody teach you, train you, retrain you, understand what's going on. There's a lot of supervising, whether it's production or services that are going out. Bosses, a lot of times, and I know this just because I've been doing this for many, many years, watch for when people make mistakes. And I'm going to want, you're doing great until you screw up, right? And so I actually have leaders who have said that. I don't even need to really talk or engage with them until they screw up. And that's really a very different mindset. When you think about a coaching leader, right, is now really focusing and recognizing on the individual and the team strengths that they have, and how do we get them engaged? How do you take the people that you hired or the people that are part of your team, even Diane with your organization, with however many independent people that you have working for you, it's being able, how do I leverage them? And I know a little bit about that because I was in network marketing for a company called Usborne Books for many, many years. And I realized that gosh, I'm giving them all these great sales techniques, but why are people still not being successful? And I realized I had to change the way I looked at people and recognize, how do I bring out their best for their businesses? So again, a coaching leader really sets very clear expectations, performance goals, and has no problem giving feedback. And let's face it, even those folks where you've given your best, your all to try to set them up for success, if they still don't want to follow that pathway, sometimes the best avenue is for them to not be part of your pathway. It means they just are not a good candidate for your bus. So again, just be thinking about that. So any questions around or thoughts about when you think about bosses and coaching leaders, when you look at some of these characteristics here, guys? Okay. All right.
Lorraine, I'm just going to jump in for a minute.
Yes, please do.
We've had just a few questions about the handout, and so I just wanted to let folks know it did go out in an email just a few minutes before the session. So if you're not seeing it in your inbox, perhaps check the spam. Otherwise, please send me a chat and I'll make sure I get it over to you. But just know it should be there unless it's in the internet somewhere. But just go ahead and check your spam. It might be there too.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rosie, for helping them out.
Yep.
So a few statistics, guys. Whoops, sorry about that. Going backwards here. People who are really under a coaching leader, a leader who embraces the coaching mindset, tend to have much better, obviously, in their self-confidence, because they have a leader who sees their strengths and sees how to help leverage them. 70% of folks we see have improved work performance. The relationships are better, they're stronger. Doesn't mean that we're friends with everybody, but there's this sense that they are better connected. Their communication, and this is one that I talk about tremendously. We each individual are responsible for our own communication. You don't have the power. Nobody has the power to make somebody communicate better with you, but you have to think about, what can I do to mitigate what we call the illusion that there was a conversation or that we had an understanding. What does my communication look like? 57% of people who have a leader that has that coaching mindset does better with time management. And then that's a big one. And then is being a better team player, right? As the being more effective on the team. Then I just threw out again another slide, and I have no problems sharing these slides afterwards. So if you don't catch everything, guys, just relax. I'd rather you just think about what you're hearing and let your own mind process. But again, here's just again some examples. You guys put down, somebody wrote down empowering for one of the coaching words. And again, this is what leadership that uses coaching skills does. It empowers people. It believes that people do have the answers within them. It's just, how do we draw them out? We are too much of a leadership style that talks at people. And I'll talk a little bit more about how do we slow that way down and start changing the way we engage. Other things here, identifying organizational goals, those are important, but opportunities. Just because somebody's failing, it doesn't mean that we can't help them, and move through that process. So again, these will be shared with you. I want to really kind of get into the guts of things right now and talk about the first thing is our mindset. And your mindset is a big part, a very big part of how you lead. So if you see your leadership as feeling powerful, okay, it's more likely that you're going to come out off authoritarian. If you see your leadership ensuring that others don't mess up, you're probably likely going to have a lot of fearful followers, okay? And so I want to ask you, what does that leadership mindset look like? What's the belief system that you hold on to, that you hang on to, that could help you be a better coaching leader, right? And this is something that you really need to think about and reflect about. And so what I want to do is share with you 3 different ways to think about coaching in your leadership. The first one is to think about in your mindset that my responsibility is to develop others, to be able to see the strengths that each individual has and leverage it, because it's going to be good for them and ultimately be good for your team or your organization. It's also being able to see the obstacles that get in the way for that person and helping them work through that, managing those barriers, those things that impede development and accomplishment. Being able to give feedback to somebody, whether it's praiseworthy or it's corrective. So let me stop a little bit on that for a minute and say this is that we don't often enough give praise. And when we do give praise, tend to use sort of a broad brush stroke of, wow, you're doing a great job. It's amazing how well you're doing. Make sure you take the time to give a very specific example of what somebody has done. Now, I personally prefer to teach my leaders to talk about giving corrective feedback versus saying, hey, Rosie, I need to give you a little bit of negative feedback. Right away, she's going to feel defensive about that, right? But as soon as I use words like corrective feedback, there is an understanding that something needs to change. Again, because I care enough about this person to develop them, these are some of the things that we can look at. Another tenet that we want to look at is inspiring their growth. It's one thing to develop them. The next level then is to, how do I inspire them? And when you think about inspiration, it's almost beyond encouraging. It's exciting. It's inflaming them. But how do you do it? How does it look different than developing? Well, the first thing you have to realize is it's not about you. You got to make it about them. You have to champion them. You need to listen to things like their values. How are they talking about their interests, their dreams, things they think about things they dwell on, right? So let them try something that's come to their mind, and don't be afraid of it. Is it ever going to work and all that stuff? Just go, you know what? Let's see what happens, right? Inspire them to be a little gutsy and a little risky, with you encouraging them behind all the way, right? So we've got developing them, right, to see their strengths. We've got inspiring them to champion ideas or thoughts they might have. And lastly, is to unlock their potential. And what I'm talking about here is really giving them opportunities that stretch them, right? Maybe they even haven't thought about it, but you see something that you go, you know what? I'm going to give you this, and I know it's going to be a little bit challenging for you, but I want you to challenge your mindset. I want you to challenge your behaviors through that. Show how their ideas might benefit the team. Encourage them to bring some of that out where they may likely want to pull back and not share as much, right? Make sure that you're always helping them set up personal and professional goals. I think we tend to put a lot of emphasis on those professional goals, but we also need to remember that as individuals, whether you're a leader of people or not, you're leading yourself, right? Am I growing? I know for me personally, because I'm constantly training and coaching, I make myself go through some kind of a training every 2 years. I can't stay stagnant. I got to be challenged and encouraged, and I got to look at myself as well. So these three things are different: developing, inspiring, and unlocking. So any questions at all when you look at those, or thoughts that you might have? Feeling okay about things so far? Oh, all right, awesome. Okay, because I'd love to hear your feedback when you're ready. The second part that we want to talk about now is, we talked about the mindset, right? What's the belief system that I have? And I want to encourage you to think about, do I think about developing people, inspiring them, and unlocking? The next part is, who am I? What is it about me, the traits that I have that can really lend itself to be a coaching leader? And I'm really pulling in, some of you I'm sure are aware of some emotional intelligence traits here. And I really believe in these. This is something I train a tremendous amount, but I do think these 4 pieces of emotional intelligence are critical. Number 1, self-aware. It's the most important of the 4. If you don't get who you are, if you don't understand what your strengths, your weaknesses are, the triggers that we all have about people, right? The biases that we might have, those things will get in the way of really being able to encourage, coach, and motivate others. Do I understand what motivates me? Do I understand what my values are, right? And then, do you understand those of others, which is much more around social awareness, right? The other thing about self-awareness is leaders who have that coaching piece in it understand that they take responsibility for their actions and recognize that they are role modeling behaviors they want others to follow. Let me say that again. They are role modeling behaviors that they want others to follow. So that self-awareness piece is very, very critical. The next part then is, because I understand who I am and I understand my triggers, I know that I'm as human as everybody. How do I manage those disruptive emotions that at times kind of put us out of balance, right? We just don't show up in our best self. We all have days like that, right? So as a coaching leader, I am so aware of it that I have strategies in place to help me better navigate those difficult situations. So let me ask you a question. Think about a time where maybe your emotions got the best of you. How do you think it impacted your ability to maybe help develop somebody else? Anybody care to try to answer that question? Time when your emotions got out of whack, and how did it impact you maybe with relationships and developing others? Thoughts on that, Diane? You got anything in there?
Well, yeah, it's real personal. When I went through a divorce, and being in our organization, you know, people that feel like family and people you're working with to coach and mentor. And that was really pretty challenging to
Sure.
manage my emotions, but continue to work with people that were going to continue to work with my former husband.
Absolutely. Right. So your awareness of that, right. And trying to navigate, that's a great example. And thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that. I appreciate that. Again, thinking about, you know, even Tara, in your situation, you guys might be, and I'm just making a, you know, an assumption here, you might be at the point where you guys are triggered now by this person, because it's like, you know, you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't here on working with her. And so now it's a matter of looking and going, what else do I do here?
Yeah,
Right.
very much so. And the other side of that is like, I feel like particularly with this individual, because it's a frustrating situation, right? And um, feeling that way, you know, it gets under your skin a little bit. And so now, like, I feel like for that managing emotions part, I'm hypersensitive, right? That I'm making sure that I am managing my emotions to the best of my ability, so that I'm not becoming biased. I'm not, you know, acting, especially not acting in any kind of retaliatory way. But then you almost back off a little bit too much because of that hypersensitivity. So yeah, yeah,
It's
challenging in and of itself, right?
yeah, I think when I get down to managing relationships, maybe maybe there'll be a piece in there that will help you out a little bit. So it sounds like from what you're saying, you have a pretty good hold of understanding who you are and how you're navigating. And now it's sort of like, okay, but nothing's really changing, right? So you're doing everything on your part to make sure that those biases and those judgments don't come out. So when we look at the next part, there is being socially aware is a little bit what Tara said, you know, am I really, really quick to make this judgment and with an employee? Do I step back a little bit and can I sit more in the observation seat and be curious about what's happening, right? And when we're triggered, it can be really tough. We can go right into judgment and biases that we have. It's just part of human beings, a little bit of our of the way that our brain is kind of taking care of things. But when we're a coaching leader, there's three things that I really encourage leaders to do: is learn to be more curious. Curiosity is not an emotion. It is something that comes from this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, that's trying to understand. It's trying to be almost, it's intrigued by something that's going on, but it typically does not involve emotion. The other thing is being empathetic, stepping into somebody else's shoe. Now, when I say that, it doesn't always mean that you have to agree with what somebody is saying. You can be empathetic without necessarily agreeing with what's going on, but you're coming from the perspective that from the way they see it, from their point of view, it makes sense that they would feel that way. And lastly, is really understanding, how can I suspend judgment? If I don't know what's going on, I learn to kind of suspend it. And you're watching me do this with my hands, because I look at it as a brick. And I mean that. If that brick falls in the wrong place because you went ahead and made a judgment, it doesn't feel good. So can I take that brick and just move it out of the way and go, you know what? Until I know, I don't know. Okay. So I'm just going to get it out of the way until I know I don't know. And then lastly, when I think about important traits, again, around this whole realm of emotional intelligence, is really thinking about, how do I manage relationships? It does not mean, and I am emphatic about this, it does not mean that you have to be friends with everybody, but it does mean a coaching leader typically has decent relationships with a wide variety of people. We kind of go back a little bit to social awareness. How well connected are you outside of the group that you feel most comfortable? Because the group that you feel most comfortable will always support you, will rarely challenge you. right? And so sometimes it's like, how do I stretch a little bit, and how well am I connecting with people outside? Same thing with those managing those relationships is, am I able to do that across the board with a lot of people? When you're able to manage relationships, you also understand this: as long as there are two people in a room, there will be conflict. That's all we need is two human beings, and we can create war, right? All right. So it's not an if situation, it's a when situation. If there's two human beings in a room, there is eventually going to be some conflict. And being able to confront it, now notice what I'm saying here, and able to confront it, I did not say be confrontational. And that is something that I see a lot of times, that leaders will say, well, I really don't want to be confrontational. I'm like, then don't be. Because if you look up the word confrontational, it is not the same thing as to confront. To confront something is to bring it to somebody. Now, how you bring it to somebody takes a skill set to do that. But if we continually not bring it to somebody and recognize that when I don't do that, it's because I'm protecting myself, because I'm uncomfortable, right? I'm at some kind of just this whole idea of having to bring something where, quite frankly, the Western civilization does not do a great job about, specifically North American continent, since we were little, have been raised to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? But we really don't teach folks how to do it, because we really need to say, hey, little kids, these are situations that come up. This is the way to handle it, right? So the other thing about managing relationships is recognizing when I do have to bring something to you, it's because I care enough to do it, but I'm also going to hold you accountable. In other words, this is the pathway that we need to have you go on. And if you choose not to go on that pathway, then there are consequences from that. But we're gonna coach you as much as we can until you say, yeah, no, nope, and then at some point we have to go, okay, things are just not working. So be thinking about those 4 tenets: self-awareness in the sense of, who am I, how do I show up, being socially aware, understanding, where's my judgments, how do I manage those different emotions that can come up and create havoc on decision making, and how I work with others, and then managing relationships and all different things, the good, the bad, and the ugly through that. Any questions on those 4 before I shift to our last section, and then we can definitely open up with questions and thoughts. Questions on any of that? Good. All right. Let me just put the 3 skill sets. This is our third part. So we talked about mindset, right? What's my belief system, mindset, what's our belief system, and then some of those traits that we have. My self-awareness, do I get who I am? How do I manage it? So I always think about my hands. How do I manage my emotions? Socially aware, like what do I see, and how quick am I to make judgments, which we spend a lot of time with these eyes, and we give our eyes a tremendous amount of credibility when a lot of times our eyes don't see everything, right? And then how do I actually manage relationships? So now it's about, as a coaching leader, what skill set do I, and I'm just bringing just bare minimum here, guys. But the first thing is we need to really start listens to understand. We need to think about the fact that we talk a lot more than we realize, okay? And a lot of what's happening, I'm going to share kind of a unique statistic, which usually blows a lot of my leaders away when I tell them. So let's do this with you guys. How many words do you think the average adult speaks in a minute? How many words do you think the average adult speaks in a minute?
A lot.
What does that number sound like? Diane, what do you think?
I'm thinking maybe at least a couple hundred.
Couple hundred, okay. Any other guesses?
I would say about 100 or somewhere close to 100.
Okay, thanks, William. Okay, great. Yeah, so very close, guys, on that one. If you want to write this down, it's 150 to 200 words a minute. Okay, 150 to 200 words a minute. Okay, So I'm talking to you guys probably closer to a tops 150. I'm really trying to be emphatic in certain ways that I'm sharing some things with you. That said, how many words per minute do you think we can take in? How many words per minute do you think we can take in?
Probably half that.
Yeah, about half that, Tara. You guys ready?
Yep.
650 to 750 words a minute. Yeah. Ooh, we got a little bit of an issue, right? So I'm speaking like this, and your brain's going like this, right? And your brain's going, my God, is she talking slow, right? Because you're thinking about, oh, shoot, I got to send out that email. I need to, did I shut the garage door down? I mean, I can be even thinking about stuff like that and still be a presenter today, right? That mind of ours is so busy and can take in so much. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And the other side of that coin means it impacts our listening, right? So we can all be sitting here. We've got tremendous distractions. Our brain is just working overload. And so to be able to really listen to somebody means that you have to be intentional about it. And it can't be about you. It can't be about you. So if Jill's talking, she's got the mic and Lorraine needs to listen, right? Here's some of the things that a coaching leader starts to do when they are listening. They start listening to people's values. They start listening to the barriers that people bring up, their concerns, their dreams, their aspirations, things that are important. They're not thinking about what's the next thing I want to say, or hey, I got an answer for you. They're just listening to what somebody's, and they're watching their body language and where they kind of get excited when they talk about something. And then they can go, wow, Emily, when you mentioned that, your whole eyes just lit up, So when we turn off that switch of listening, what happens is we make too many assumptions and interpretations, and that impedes the development of your people. That stops unlocking potential. That becomes a barrier to inspire others, okay? The second thing is to ask questions. And as a coach, I can tell you right now that we all think we ask good questions, but 85% of our questions are closed-ended questions. Did you have a good weekend this weekend? Do you like your job? Are you going to do something this weekend? Which are yes, no, I don't know kind of answers. It takes a different mindset because I have to listen. I got to ask different questions. And so we start asking questions that come more out of curiosity, that start with what, how, sometimes why, depending on your audience. But mostly what, how, and another starters are good starters are help me understand ... Or give me an example of what you mean when you say ... Please share with me how you were able to overcome whatever that is. Those are all questions that encourage much more conversation than just a yes, no, or I don't know. Okay. I will tell you, when you start to take on the way you change conversations with people, you get a whole different relationship with people. You start to see that people become more self-reliant, right? But if all you're doing is talking at people and telling people, then you're still sort of in that parental part of the relationship. And it starts to become almost an unspoken dance between the two of you that keeps the other person passive. And then you walk away and go, I don't know what it is about Chris, but they just don't ever seem to come up with any answers. I'm the one who constantly is feeding them. This is where they can go. And you're tired. And guess what? You're complaining about it, but what you're doing is actually enabling it, because you're still in a much more of a monologue than you are in a dialogue. And open-ended questions promote dialogue. Okay. Lastly, and this is probably the piece that we really don't do a great job, is holding others accountable for their success because you care about them. Now, what does that mean? Accountability has just become kind of this ugly, dreaded word that people kind of go, I don't like doing that because then I feel like I'm micromanaging. But let me give you a little bit of insight on 3 words that I see people interchange all the time. And that is accountability, ownership, and responsibility. Let me say that again. Accountability, ownership, and responsibility. But we're going to start with ownership first. But I'm going to do it in a story, and I think this might help you. I live in a house in a neighborhood. I own my house. Well, the bank still owns it, but you know what I'm saying. Okay. So I own a home, right? That's my ownership. I am responsible as being part of the neighborhood to make sure that my grounds are kept up, to make sure that I take my trash out on Wednesdays for the garbage guy, that I don't just take my trash and throw it all over the front yard, that I don't have crap and extra cars and whatever laying around. I'm responsible for that because I own my home. Now, if I decide to be irresponsible, okay, still own my home, but I'm irresponsible, who holds me accountable?
The township.
Township,
Local
neighbors.
nation.
Neighbors are going to be knocking on the township going, hey, go check out this one. Do you see the difference between those 3? Ownership, responsibility, and accountability. So when you are working with somebody who is not owning their performance or their behavior, they don't see it, okay, then we got to bring that to them. They need to now be responsible to make the changes that you want to see. And that takes a conversation. If they choose not to be responsible, okay, through all of this, you're holding them accountable. There's something that says, this is what the expectation is. Because I care about you being successful, because I care about you being part of the team, because I care about what this organization is about, this is the expectation and this is the pathway we want you to go. We want to help you get there, but you need to pick up the tools to do that. And if you don't, this is going to happen. And depending on what organization you work with, that can all look different. So these 3 pieces are very, very important as a coaching leader's skill set: to listen, to ask great questions, and to hold others because you care about them. You care about your organization. Okay. And questions about that, thoughts about it. Love to hear anything that you want to share on that.
I love your example. That was great.
Did that help you on the homeowner? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here we come to it. It's like, it's been what, 45, 50 minutes here, Miss Rosie. I want to make sure I'm honoring time, but what do you think you took away from just, again, I'm giving you 20,000 foot view here in this time, thoughts that you guys might have? What was your takeaways?
For me, it's a good reminder of things that I've already been practicing in a lot of regards, but also it now is posing that challenge of, like, I'm listening to this and I'm realizing I do a lot of these things. The rest of my leadership, not so much. So I'm trying to figure out how to, what's the word I'm looking for? To act, right? Like I'm execute. That's what I'm looking for. So like I'm trying to figure out how do I execute better on some of these items. And so that's my takeaway that I'm going to challenge myself with, is how do I execute better and maybe help my team or my leadership team as well.
Yeah, quite honestly, and only from just what you said, Tara, I'm not quite hearing accountability here. It seems like you guys are doing a great job in talking and trying to set her up, and she's basically saying, nope, I don't want to change. And so I'm just wondering how you can have the leadership team maybe look at that whole ownership, responsibility, and accountability to see that this person, maybe can make a turn and
Yeah.
do things differently.
100%. And that's what my struggle has been in this situation is I'm pushing for, in that particular one,
Yeah.
I'm pushing for accountability. And we're not necessarily all on the same page with that. So that's why we continue to have the struggles.
That's exactly. And this won't go away. I
Nope.
can guarantee you won't.
Yeah.
And so I think the next question is, how long do you want to tolerate it? That's the question for the leadership team. How
Yeah.
long do you want to tolerate this? And what's the message that's going out to others?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly the conversations that I have been having. And so there's and the other two are kind of weighing the pros and cons. And right now, there's certain things that outweigh this behavioral issue. But even, going back to your examples of, with coaching people and figuring out people's barriers, like even with my receptionist, I have one that's been with us for a couple years now, and I spend so much time teaching, and I'm really trying to empower this individual, and the dots just aren't connecting, and I'm having a hard time identifying what their barriers are. And I've asked so many times. I'm like, okay, we've been over this a number of times, a number of different ways. What's getting in the way? What are your challenges? And I get met with, I don't know, I'm not really sure. And
let me give you, just because I have to watch the time here, Tara,
Yep.
but let me give everybody a little bit of a way to do that, because that's very common. One of the ways to kind of, when you get that, I don't know, I'm not sure, and you're trying to dig, right? You're doing your great job of asking those good questions, is to go, okay, let's take your position for a minute. Tell me about 2 or 3 parts of your job that you absolutely love. Start off on a positive, right? Tell me, and then whatever they say, great. Just tell me why. Why does it excite you, or why do you feel good about it? Because what you want to do, again, guys, is be listening to what motivates them. Okay, then what you're going to do, Tara, is you're going to say, let's talk about areas of your job, and let's, if you have to think about it as a pie, dissect it, right? What parts of your position do you just go, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know how I feel about this part. Okay, so maybe it's like not sure how to handle when an upset customer calls. Let's say that's one of them, and just say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, we call these sliding scale questions. 10 being, I could do this in my sleep, I'm completely comfortable. 1 being, I don't know what to do. Where would you put yourself on a scaling 1 to 10 on how your comfort level, your confidence level is in dealing with that situation? So let's say she says it's a 4. That's very telling. Your next question is, what made you give yourself that number, whatever it is? Okay, it's a 4. And then here's the reasons why. And say, okay, what would it take, receptionist, to get you to a 6? We're just going to go up a couple numbers. What's going to take to get you up just a couple numbers? That's where you're going to start getting some answers. She still might say, I don't know. And I would challenge her by saying, I want you to think about it. And you don't have to give me an answer now, but I want you to come back tomorrow or whenever you're going to meet next, and come back and think about, how do we get you to feel like a 6? So you're going to ask questions around that, that's using that scaling question around confidence and questions around motivation. They are not the same thing. I can be very motivated to play football, which is, I absolutely love that sport, but am I confident to take a football and throw it? Not at all. Okay. So sometimes I can be very, very confident in my job, but I'm absolutely bored and I'm no longer motivated. So what I would do is dissect the position, ask, tell me about what parts you love, what parts you don't like so much, what parts are you confident, what parts are you not motivated in? Does that help, Tara, a little bit? on that?
That is incredibly helpful because I've been doing exactly that, racking my brain of how do I ask the question differently? How do I get to what those challenges are? So I think I will be using this right away.
Okay, so it's the question on a scale of 1 to 10, you're either you can ask for confidence and motivated. Then why did you ask for that number? And how do we get you two numbers up? Do not ask somebody who's a 2 or a 3 and go, how do we get you to a 10?
Right.
Don't worry about tons. Don't worry about tons.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
Now,
No,
Rosie,
that's so helpful. Thank you.
yeah. Rosie, I just trying to respect the time here. So you tell me if you want me to do another question or not.
No, I appreciate that. I think let's open it up. Let's have one more question,
Okay.
just in an effort to keep everyone right on track of time. So if there's any last minute questions or comments, we'd be happy to take maybe one more. Otherwise, we will be sending out the recording, like I said, and we'll also have that handout. So let's take one more question if there's one. Otherwise, I think we'll end right on time.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much. I hope you were able to take something out of it today. And if you have any other questions or want to follow up, I think my information. Oh, you know what? I didn't put my. Can you share that with them?
I sure will. Yep. When I send the follow-up email, I will absolutely include your information.
That'd be
And
great.
let me just be the first to thank you. I think we all have plenty to think about and just really wise words from you today, Lorraine. So thank you.